Have you ever wondered what really happened behind the golden doors of the most powerful empire in history? The Julio-Claudian Dynasty was not only marked by grandiose achievements, but by scandals so shocking that they echoed for centuries. Family betrayals, deadly conspiracies, and dark secrets that have turned Rome into a stage of intrigue and destruction. Today, you'll dive into the 10 biggest scandals that not only rocked the ancient world, but rewrote history as we know it. This is the time to unravel the truths that Rome tried to hide and discover how these events have shaped even the present. Imagine the city of Rome, a place full of bustling streets, towering temples, and noisy markets. But behind all this glitz, a crisis was spreading like a silent poison. The Roman Republic, which had once ruled much of the known world, was on the verge of collapse. Incessant civil wars had left deep scars, and the death of Julius Caesar had plunged Rome into even greater chaos. It was in this maelstrom of uncertainty that a young man named Octavian began to emerge as the last hope to unite the wreckage of a crumbling civilization. Octavian, the chosen heir of Julius Caesar, was not a muscular warrior or a charismatic speaker like his great uncle. He was calculating, intelligent, and above all, patient. At just 19 years old, he found himself thrust into the center of a power struggle that forgave no weaknesses. At first, few would bet on his victory. After all, his rivals were imposing figures like Mark Antony, an experienced general, and Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. However, Octavian possessed something that neither of them had, a clear vision of how to turn chaos into order. After years of shaky alliances and political betrayals, Octavian defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the iconic Battle of Actium. This victory was the final blow that consolidated his power, but Octavian knew that in Rome, the sword alone was not enough to rule. The Roman people had overthrown kings centuries ago and were suspicious of anyone who looked like a monarch. Then, in an unexpected move, he announced that he would relinquish all his powers and return control to the Senate. It was a risky and brilliant move. The senators, taken by surprise, not only returned him to power but also gave him a new title, Augustus, the Illustrious. It was a name that sounded divine, but it didn't carry the weight of a crown. Octavian, now Augustus, would rule under the facade of being only the first citizen, one among equals. However, everyone knew the truth. He had absolute control of Rome in his hands. Have you ever tried to unravel what made Rome the largest empire in the world, but ended up lost in an avalanche of details? Don't worry, you're not alone. Imagine finally mastering the most decisive moments in Roman history, learning about the brilliant strategies of generals like Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus, and understanding how their tactics shaped the fate of the world. With that in mind, I created the digital book, The 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire, where you will have access to a clear, objective analysis full of exclusive curiosities, discover how Rome won battles considered impossible, and become a true expert in Roman military history. Don't waste time. Access the pinned comment and guarantee your copy right now. Enjoy it before the units run out. Under his leadership, Augustus transformed the empire. He brought stability after years of war, embellished Rome with monumental works, and reorganized the government so that everything revolved around his figure. The Senate still existed, but it was little more than a decorative piece. Augustus kept up the appearances of a republic, but in reality, he had built an empire. And so, the Julio-Claudian Dynasty was born, a lineage that would carry the fate of Rome for nearly a century. Augustus not only founded the Roman Empire, he laid the foundation of an era of prosperity and power. However, what began with order and greatness also sowed the seeds of intrigue, tragedy, and disputes over the throne. The next chapters of this story would involve emperors who, each in their own way, would leave deep marks. Some glorious, others devastating. The stage was set, the pieces positioned. Augustus may have brought peace, but those who would come after would face battles that no sword could win. Before continuing, I saw here that you forgot to subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss all the content about Rome that I will always be bringing. Augustus built his government with a clear vision, to stabilize and strengthen Rome after years of political chaos and civil wars that nearly destroyed the Republic. His actions were based on well-calculated strategies, encompassing diplomacy, structural reforms, and an intelligent use of culture as a political tool. Not only did he consolidate his power, but he also shaped an empire that would be the model of administration for centuries. One of Augustus's greatest concerns was to ensure the security of the Roman Empire without relying solely on wars, which had depleted the resources and morale of the people. He invested heavily in diplomacy, striking strategic agreements with neighboring kingdoms. These alliances created a network of client states that protected the empire's borders from invasion. For example, when trading with the Parthian Empire, an old rival of Rome, Augustus used intermediate kingdoms as buffers to avoid direct confrontations. These strategies not only reduced the costs of keeping the army on constant alert, but also strengthened Rome's position as a respected and feared power. At the same time, Augustus turned his attention to the interior of the empire. He knew that Rome's true strength depended on its foundations, and that meant efficient infrastructure. His reforms to the road system were transformative. It connected the most distant provinces with the capital, creating a road network that not only allowed for the rapid movement of troops, but also boosted trade and communication. These roads, many paved with stones that would endure for centuries, were considered a symbol of Rome's presence and authority. Another crucial aspect of Augustus's rule was the reform of supply systems. Rome, with its growing population, faced challenges in securing basic resources, especially water. Augustus oversaw the construction and modernization of aqueducts that brought fresh water to the city, supplying public fountains, thermal baths, and residences. These works were not only practical, they showed the Roman people that the government was committed to the well-being of the population. In addition to practical improvements, Augustus understood the power of culture as a means of uniting the empire. He became a patron of the arts, supporting writers, poets, and artists who helped shape a cultural identity for Rome. Poets such as Virgil and Horace created works that exalted Roman values, the greatness of their history, and the figure of Augustus as a leader. Virgil's The Aeneid, for example, became an epic that connected the founding of Rome to the gods and fate, reinforcing the idea that Augustus's rule was part of a divine plan. The economy was also a key pillar of his government. Augusto implemented a tax reorganization that brought more justice and efficiency to the system. He eliminated arbitrary collection practices and created a centralized treasury, ensuring that resources were managed in a way that underpinned both internal functioning and territorial expansions. This treasury was used to finance public works, maintain the army, and boost trade between the provinces, generating wealth and stability. Augusto also understood the importance of his public image. He knew that after years of distrust of leaders who resembled kings, it was crucial to project a figure who balanced authority and humility. He declined the title of king, preferring to be called prince or first citizen. This choice was strategic, as it showed that he was just one more among the Romans, although in practice he concentrated all the power. This posture won over the people and the senators, who saw him as a guardian of republican traditions, even though the republic was already dead. Combining diplomacy, infrastructure, culture, and economics, Augustus transformed Rome from an unstable republic into a strong, organized empire. It brought stability after years of war and laid the foundation for what would be known as the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace that would last for more than 2 centuries. But as Augustus ensured the stability of his rule, the seeds of future challenges began to be planted, and the fate of his work would depend on the leaders who came after him. Tell me here in the comments what you think of this period of Roman history. Some believe it was the best period in Rome. I want to know your opinion. Imagine the silence that engulfs Rome when the news arrives. Augustus, the man who shaped the empire, is dead. All eyes now turn to Tiberius, the reluctant successor, who many see as a pale shadow of the leader who came before. But who was Tiberius? And how did he, a man shrouded in personal tragedy and hesitation, take on the most powerful role in the world? The story begins long before this transition. Tiberius was the son of Livia Drusus, the wife of Augustus, and from an early age he was molded to serve Rome. But unlike other potential heirs, he never seemed to eagerly seek power. His relationship with Augusto was complex, marked by respect but also by a certain distance. For Augustus, Tiberius was efficient but cold, a brilliant general, but without the charisma necessary to lead the people with the same passion as him. Augusto had other plans. He bet on the youth of Marcellus, his nephew, and later on Agrippa, his son-in-law and right-hand man. When these men died, he turned his attention to his grandsons, Gaius and Lucius. raising them to be the future of Rome. But fate, implacable as always, took the chosen successors one by one. First Marcellus, then Agrippa, and finally Gaius and Lucius. The losses were devastating, both for Augustus and for the empire. In the end, only Tiberius remained, the silent survivor of a dynasty marked by tragedy. Although Tiberius was the inevitable choice, he was far from ideal for Augustus. In a strategic move, Augustus adopted Tiberius as his son, cementing the line of succession. But the road there was not simple. Tiberius was estranged from Rome for years, sent to command military campaigns away from the corridors of power. In Germania and Pannonia, he showed his true strength. Tiberius was a military genius. He knew how to lead men on the battlefield and, more importantly, he knew when to negotiate and when to fight. His campaigns pacified rebellious tribes and strengthened the empire's borders, making him a respected figure among the legions. In Germany, he faced one of the biggest challenges of his career. After the disaster of the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, in which 3 legions were annihilated, Tiberius reorganized the army and restored the confidence of the troops. In Pannonia, he resolved a rebellion quickly and accurately, preventing the conflict from becoming a protracted war. These feats turned him into a military hero, but he still carried the weight of being compared to Augustus. When it came time to take the throne, Tiberius did not celebrate. He knew that Augustus's legacy was gigantic, and his own reservations about power only added to the pressure. He accepted the title of emperor, but insisted on being called prince, trying to maintain the illusion that the Senate still possessed relevance. For Tiberius, ruling was not a privilege but a burden. Still, Tiberius's story was just beginning. He had proven his strength on the battlefield, but now he faced a much greater challenge: winning the hearts of the Roman people and ensuring that the empire did not crumble under the weight of expectations. As Rome looked at its new leader with uncertainty, the question remained: would Tiberius be able to honor Augustus's legacy, or would his reluctance mark the beginning of a new era of instability? Before proceeding, I saw here that you forgot to like the video. Help us to always bring you more content about Rome and enjoy the video. Tiberius's reign was deeply impacted by internal conflicts and the growing political tension that marked his administration. When he decided to withdraw to the island of Capri, Tiberius opened a power vacuum in Rome, which was quickly exploited by Lucius Aelius Sejanus, commander of the Praetorian Guard. Sejanus was not only an efficient soldier, he was an ambitious strategist who used his position to systematically and ruthlessly accumulate power. Sejanus began his rise by reorganizing the Praetorian Guard, the elite force responsible for the emperor's security. He brought the soldiers closer to the city, turning the Guard into a political and military instrument under his direct control. With this solid foundation, he began to manipulate the Senate and other political bodies, eliminating rivals and silencing opponents. His tactics were brutal and often involved charges of treason, which culminated in arrests or summary executions. One of the greatest victims of Sejanus's machinations was the imperial family itself. He used his influence to weaken Agrippina Greater, widow of Germanicus, who was widely admired by the people and considered a possible threat to his ambition. On Sejanus's orders, Agrippina and her children were charged with unfounded conspiracies, resulting in their arrest and eventual death. This attack on the imperial family further deepened the already existing divisions and contributed to the climate of widespread mistrust that permeated the government. Meanwhile, Tiberius, isolated in Capri, seemed oblivious to what was happening in Rome. Initially, he trusted Sejanus completely, allowing him to act practically as a regent. However, as reports and rumors began to reach the island, Tiberius began to question his commander's intentions. Sejanus's increasingly daring behavior, which included rapprochement with influential senators and the systematic elimination of rivals, aroused suspicion even among the emperor's allies. Tiberius, known for his cunning and strategic skill, decided to act discreetly but decisively. He began a careful investigation into Sejanus, gathering enough evidence to expose his conspiracies. When the time was right, Tiberius sent a letter to the Senate denouncing Sejanus as a traitor. The answer was swift. Sejanus was arrested, tried, and executed on the same day, along with several of his accomplices. It was a withering blow that temporarily restored order in Rome, but the scars left by his ambition continued to haunt the empire. The fall of Sejanus did not solve all the problems. The damage done by his administration left the Roman government weakened. with deep divisions in the Senate and a climate of fear and paranoia. Tiberius, for his part, remained on Capri, increasingly isolated and suspicious of everyone around him. The relationship with his own family was irreparably strained, and the emperor seemed increasingly detached from the political realities of Rome. This episode was a turning point in Tiberius's reign, revealing both the dangers of his withdrawal and the consequences of entrusting too much power to a single person. The vacuum of direct leadership paved the way for intrigues that nearly destroyed the stability of the empire. While Tiberius kept a firm grip at bay, the political chaos unfolding in Rome showed how vulnerable a distant, centralized government could be to individual ambitions. Tiberius's reign went on, but the scars left by Sejanus remained a reminder of the risks of neglecting the power accumulated by seemingly reliable allies. Imagine the people of Rome crowding the streets, shouting with joy as the new emperor rises to power. After the dark years under Tiberius, Caligula was the hope of a new era. Young, charismatic, and heir to the beloved Germanicus, he seemed to be the leader everyone expected. His childhood in the legions at his father's side had won the hearts of the soldiers, who gave him the nickname Caligula, or Little Booties, for the small military sandals he wore. Now that boy who walked among soldiers was the man who held the future of Rome in his hands. In the first months of his rule, Caligula was everything Rome wanted. He eliminated unpopular taxes, organized spectacular games, and freed political prisoners. The people adored him, and the Senate, even suspicious, applauded his actions. The city of Rome, tired of repressions and intrigues, seemed to have found a new Augustus. But this calm would not last. Shortly after his ascension, a sudden illness struck him. Some say it was poisoning, others believe it was something natural. He survived, but he was no longer the same. When Caligula recovered, his attitude changed dramatically. The young emperor, who once charmed the people, began to exhibit signs of paranoia and cruelty, as if determined to protect his power at any cost. The first to feel his wrath were members of his own family. He began to see threats in every corner, eliminating relatives who could pose any risk. Brothers-in-law, nephews, no one was safe. But Caligula didn't stop there. He immersed himself in a lifestyle marked by absurd extravagances, spending fortunes from the imperial treasury on luxuries that shocked even the richest in Rome. His relationship with power also began to change in an unsettling way. He didn't just want to be emperor, he wanted to be a god. He ordered that statues of him be placed in the temples and demanded divine worship. For the Romans, who had always separated the human from the divine, this was a shock. But for the Jews, who were absolutely monotheistic, the attempt to place a statue of them in the temple in Jerusalem was an unforgivable provocation, fueling religious and political tensions in the provinces. However, Caligula's most bizarre behavior was perhaps his relationship with his horse, Incitatus. He built a lavish residence for the animal, decorated with marble and jewels, and reportedly planned to appoint him consul, the most important political office in the Republic. The gesture was a direct affront to the Senate, showing Caligula's contempt for Roman institutions. Meanwhile, political persecutions became routine. Anyone suspected of treason was quickly eliminated. Senators and generals lived in constant fear, for it only took one misinterpreted word for the emperor's wrath to fall upon them. The mood of paranoia grew, and Rome began to move away from the initial enthusiasm it had for the young emperor. All of this culminated in an inevitable outcome. In 41 AD, officers of the Praetorian Guard, tired of his unpredictable and violent behavior, plotted to kill him. On a seemingly ordinary morning, Caligula was assassinated inside his own palace. His death brought relief to many, but it also left the empire in a state of chaos. Who would be the next to govern? Rome was on the verge of political collapse, but amid the turmoil, an unlikely man emerged. Claudius, Caligula's uncle, considered until then an unimportant figure, was found hiding in the palace. The Praetorian Guard proclaimed him emperor. Was he the leader who would bring stability back to Rome, or just another chapter in the dynasty's saga of madness and instability? Claudius took the throne at a critical time for Rome. After the chaos left by Caligula, the empire desperately needed stability. Despite being underestimated by his own family and treated as a frail and inexperienced man, he surprised everyone with his leadership skills and administrative vision. His tenure was marked by profound reforms, significant territorial conquests, and intrigues that reflected the dangers of power in Rome. From the beginning of his government, Claudius focused on reorganizing the administrative machinery of the empire. He decentralized functions and created a more efficient bureaucracy, using freedmen, former slaves who stood out for their skills, in high-level positions. This choice generated criticism from the Senate, which saw this practice as an affront to Roman traditions. However, Claudio was not shaken. He knew he needed competent and loyal people to deal with the growing complexity of the empire. His administrative reform also attacked widespread corruption. Claudio implemented stricter systems for tax collection, which reduced embezzlement and increased public revenue. With these resources, he was able to invest in infrastructure projects that strengthened Rome's economy and supply. Among the most notable achievements is the expansion of the port of Ostia, which made the supply of grain to the capital more efficient. He also oversaw the construction of aqueducts that ensured water for the expanding population and improved the city's sanitary conditions. In the military field, Claudius left his mark with the conquest of Britannia. This campaign was seen as a major challenge, as Britannia was known for its fierce resistance and difficult terrain. Claudius, determined to expand the borders of the empire, led the Roman legions in a series of battles that resulted in victory and the integration of Britannia into Roman rule. This conquest not only increased Rome's prestige, but also brought new resources and strengthened the empire's control over the North Atlantic. Claudius's triumph was celebrated in style in Rome, cementing his reputation as a conquering emperor. Despite his administrative and military achievements, Claudius faced significant challenges within his own home. His third wife, Messalina, was one of the biggest scandals of his reign. Messalina was known for her unbridled ambition and extravagant lifestyle. She conspired against Claudius, even performing a symbolic marriage with another man while the emperor was away. Upon discovering the betrayal, Claudio ordered its execution, but the episode left deep marks. He became even more suspicious, surrounding himself with few allies in an increasingly hostile environment. After the fall of Messalina, Claudius married Agrippina, his niece, in a move that shocked many Romans, but which had clear political motivations. Agrippina was a shrewd and extremely ambitious woman. She used her new position to promote her son, Nero, as heir to the throne, ahead of Britannicus, Claudius's biological son. Agrippina maneuvered deftly in palace politics, gaining influence and power, while Claudius began to realize the danger she posed. Some accounts suggest that shortly before his death, Claudius was considering measures to limit Agrippina's power and secure Britannica's rights, but he did not have time to act. Claudio's death, which occurred abruptly, was surrounded by mystery and suspicion. Many believe that Agrippina poisoned him to ensure Nero's rise. With his death, a reign marked by lasting reforms, territorial conquests and internal intrigues that defined the political environment of Rome ended. Claudius's legacy remains that of a leader who defied expectations, stabilized an empire in crisis, and expanded its borders. However, his death left the throne in the hands of Nero, whose youth and unpredictable temperament would put Rome before new challenges that would define a completely different era. Imagine Rome in flames, the fire consuming everything as rumors spread like the fire itself. Some say it was an accident, others whisper that the emperor himself, Nero, ordered everything to make room for his extravagant golden palace. The people, furious, begin to look at their leader with suspicion, and the reign that began with promises of hope soon descends into chaos. Nero, heir to the Julio-Claudian Dynasty, began his rule under the guidance of Agrippina, his mother, and the philosopher Seneca. At first, he looked promising, promoting popular reforms and enchanting the people with his love of the arts. But Agrippina's control soon choked him, and he orchestrated his execution, shocking Rome and tarnishing his image forever. When the Great Fire devastated the city, Nero sought to blame the Christians, starting a brutal persecution that marked his rule. Meanwhile, his military neglect and political paranoia led to revolts among senators and generals. Betrayals and conspiracies became frequent until Nero, abandoned by all, was declared a public enemy. With no way out, he fled and took his own life in 68 AD, ending not only his reign, but also the Julio-Claudian Dynasty. The chaos left by Nero plunged Rome into the year of the four emperors, a power struggle that would decide the future of the empire. The fall of Nero in 68 AD marked the end of an era that began with the glorious rise of Augustus, the founder of the Roman Empire. What followed was a period of political chaos so intense that it became known as the Year of the Four Emperors. For the first time since the empire's foundation, Rome witnessed its leadership change hands repeatedly in a short span, plunging the state into a whirlwind of power struggles. When Nero committed suicide, there was no clear successor to the throne. Without a legitimate heir, Rome became a stage for unbridled ambitions. Provincial governors, generals, and senators seized the opportunity to claim control, and the empire quickly fractured under conflicting interests. The first to proclaim himself emperor was Galba, governor of Hispania, with the Senate's support. However, his attempts to enforce strict discipline and austerity alienated both the legions and the people, causing his popularity to crumble. Dissatisfaction opened the door for Otho, a former ally of Nero, who presented himself as a more acceptable candidate for the throne. He deposed Galba, but his reign was almost immediately interrupted by the rise of Vitellius, a general supported by the Rhine legions. The clash between Otho's and Vitellius's forces led to bloody battles, with Otho taking his own life after his defeat. As Vitellius seized power, another threat emerged from the east. Vespasian, an experienced general leading campaigns in Judea, was proclaimed emperor by his troops and quickly gained support from the eastern and African provinces. Vespasian's army marched on Rome, engaging Vitellius's forces in a series of decisive battles. In the end, Vitellius was deposed and executed, and Vespasian assumed the throne, bringing the tumultuous year to a close. The Year of the Four Emperors was not just a power struggle. It exposed the vulnerabilities of an empire heavily reliant on the strength of its legions and the loyalty of provincial governors. The Julio-Claudian Dynasty, which for nearly a century symbolized stability and continuity, ended abruptly and chaotically, leaving a mixed legacy of achievements, excesses, and intrigue. With Vespasian in power, the empire entered a new phase under the Flavian dynasty, marked by reconstruction efforts and reforms. However, the scars left by the collapse of the Julio-Claudian dynasty served as a reminder of the complexities and dangers of ruling the ancient world's greatest empire. So what did you think of these 10 biggest scandals of the Julio-Claudian dynasty? Can you believe everything that happened during that time? Betrayals, conspiracies, assassinations, and even bizarre decisions shaped the Roman Empire as we know it today. These moments not only shocked the ancient world, but also completely altered the course of history. And remember, whenever you want to learn more about how Rome became the greatest empire of antiquity, head to the pinned comment and grab your digital book, 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. Get it today because copies are limited. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the past and want to keep exploring the secrets and curiosities that shaped Rome and other civilizations, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video because it helps bring more amazing content like this. And of course, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episodes filled with fascinating stories. See you in the next video.